Yes, ladies and gentlemen, my weekly football predictions are back. I am so excited for this. Hey everyone, it is Finn here, that is FYWN, and I hope you guys are all doing super well. And once again, I am so excited. This is by far my favorite series on this channel. I love doing weekly football predictions. Now, normally I do this with Premier League games, but you know what? In the meantime, Bundesliga will have to do until the Premier League returns. Now, I'm still learning some of the Bundesliga teams, don't know all of them, so tiny bit of a learning process for me. But hey, maybe you guys will learn along with me, and if you are not subscribed to this channel, please do. Almost 750 subscribers, and I would really appreciate that support. So yeah, let's get into match week 28 of the Bundesliga. Yes, it is good to be back with the predictions. Start off with the first prediction of this match week 28 in the Bundesliga, and it is by far the biggest in this match week. It is going to be Borussia Dortmund versus Bayern Munich. What a huge game that I am so excited to watch. Both teams are actually fairly close on the table. This can really decide who might actually pick up the trophy at the end of the season. Obviously, first versus second place in the competition. Both teams have only lost 4 games in the competition, so they've actually been very similar in form. But if you study this fixture as a whole, Bayern Munich have won 7 out of the last 10 meetings between these two teams. So it's pretty obvious who the favourites in this fixture have been. Also, looking at that, in the last 2 games between these two teams, Bayern Munich have won 4-0 and 5-0. The one before that, Borussia Dortmund got a slight win, and the time before that, Bayern Munich got a 6-0 win. So Bayern Munich have been, well, fair to say, very dominant in this fixture. So surely you would say, well, they're the clear favourites to win, especially with individual talent so far this season. Like Lewandowski has had an amazing season. Gnabry really come out of nowhere and shown that he can be a world-class wing. And Thomas Müller has really stepped up another level. But I am worried about Bayern Munich's defence. If you look at their defence this season, look, it hasn't been the worst, but in their previous game, they conceded 2 goals within the spans of about 5 minutes versus Eintracht Frankfurt, which isn't looking promising. And you know what? Could it be foreshadowing this game versus Borussia Dortmund? As I said, Borussia Dortmund aren't the favourites in this fixture, but their talent has been amazing this season. I can't speak English apparently, although I've been speaking it my whole life. Looking at Haaland alone, he's only played 10 games in the Bundesliga, but he's got 10 goals and 2 assists. He is unstoppable. Well, maybe except when it comes to, post-match interviews.
After the final whistle, you and the whole teammates, you were going to the south stand, the famous yellow wall, which was empty today, of course. Why did you do that?
Why not?
Jadon Sancho has got 30 goal contributions if you add his goals and assists together, looking unstoppable. And Thorgan Hazard has really shined for this Borussia Dortmund team, which who would have thought that he would be the best Hazard brother this season? I think there will be lots of goals, and you might think, both of these teams look very strong. Who do I think will win? I think Borussia Dortmund will win this game. I know that's a very risky one to say, but I think it's going to be a 4-3 to Borussia Dortmund. There will be a lot of goals. There is no doubt about that. The second fixture of this match week is going to be Bayer Leverkusen versus Wolfsburg. Now, this is also very competitive because both these teams are competing to get into a Europa League spot, and both of them could actually achieve a Champions League spot. So both of these teams are looking very strong. And you look at the likes of Bayer Leverkusen, who maybe their individuals aren't as strong as last season, but they just beat Borussia Mönchengladbach 3-1, and Borussia Mönchengladbach have had an exceptional season so far. So that is looking very promising. As I said, there are some great players at Bayer Leverkusen. There are the likes of obviously Kai Havertz, who I've been very impressed with over time, and the likes of Volland in attack. As I said, I think attack-wise, Bayer Leverkusen are very sorted, and they could do a really good job versus Wolfsburg. And if you look at Wolfsburg's side, they've also, as I said, been pretty good this season. They've got Weghorst, I don't know. The main striker, 11 goals in 25 games. Look, it's not as great as obviously Lewandowski or Timo Werner, but that is still pretty good stats. He's a pretty okay striker. They could do with a better striker. They've got some pretty good midfielders in there. They've got Mbabu obviously at right back, who's done a pretty solid job, and he's very consistent when it comes to how good he is with his tackling. Now, as I said, both of these teams I'd say are pretty good. They both fight for like that 5th, 6th place position on the table. So it is going to be very, very close. But at the end of the day, as I said, I really view Bayer Leverkusen's attack as much more dominant, and I think it's going to be a pretty comfortable 2-0 win to Bayer Leverkusen. But who knows, maybe defensively Wolfsburg will shut them out, because they do have Casteels in goal, a very good goalkeeper who's conceded the third least amount of goals so far this Bundesliga season. So who knows, I might be proven wrong. The third match I have for you guys is going to be between Eintracht Frankfurt and Freiburg. Now, looking at these teams, I would normally like to predict that Eintracht Frankfurt would win, but they haven't had the best of seasons. They are currently sitting in 13th place, which isn't promising, especially after how well they did last season. But Freiburg, looking at them themselves, they don't have any super stand-out players in their team. I would almost compare them to a Sheffield United if you could compare Premier League to, obviously, Bundesliga. It's not a super standout team, no super standout players, but they are doing relatively well. Freiburg are currently 7th in the Bundesliga table, where Eintracht Frankfurt are 13th. So once again, looking at table positions, you'd almost have to assume that Eintracht Frankfurt wouldn't have the upper hand in this. But looking at Freiburg, they've just recently lost to Werder Bremen, who have had an awful season. And personally, this might sound biased, but I like Eintracht Frankfurt, although their top scorer this season is their centre-back. But Hinteregger, that centre-back, has had a pretty good season. 8 goals from centre-back position is pretty good, and he gets less than 1 foul per game. I really trust his ability as a centre-back, along with the fact that Kostic has had a pretty good season up front in that left mid position. I am going to take the risky one and go for Eintracht Frankfurt with a 2-0 win. The next fixture for you guys is going to be between Werder Bremen and Borussia Mönchengladbach. Now, this, in my opinion, is a very easy one for me, because I am a huge Borussia Mönchengladbach fan. I think that they've got some amazing players, and at the end of the day, there are some superstar players that make this team a really good team. Werder Bremen have not really competed that well this season. They look like they could actually get relegated by the end of the season, although they do have 1 or 2 standout players. They've got a pretty good goalkeeper. They've got Toprak in the centre-back position, who used to be a really good centre-back on his days, along with the likes of Davy Klaassen in the midfield, who, since he's left Ajax, has never really been the same. As I said, there are some really good super standout players at Borussia Mönchengladbach. They've got Sommer in goal, who, let's be honest, probably one of the best goalkeepers in the Bundesliga this season. They've got the likes of Ginter in centre-back, who's had, once again, like Sommer, a really good season. And Plee up in the striker position. I mean, 9 goals and 8 assists this season. That is pretty good going. And I do have to say, I'm going to go for a pretty easy win to Borussia Mönchengladbach. I mean, I might get proven wrong. RB Leipzig is next, and Hertha Berlin. Now, once again, I think that's going to be a pretty obvious one for me, guys. If you look at the likes of RB Leipzig this season, they have only gotten 3 losses, but they have gotten far too many draws. But at the end of the day, I do think there is so much quality in this team. Timo Werner has just gotten a hat-trick in his recent game, and he's looking like one of the top strikers in the world, no matter just the Bundesliga. I mean, their young, talented midfield is all pretty much in form. Their defense and goalkeeper is looking solid. As I said, few too many draws. And then if you look at the likes of Hertha Berlin, I mean, I want to give an absolutely huge win to RB Leipzig, but Hertha Berlin have just gotten a 4-0 win, so I mean, that gives them a tiny bit of confidence, and they're actually linked to Loris Karius, which is pretty weird for transfer-wise, and I wonder if he can redeem his career there. But at the end of the day, there are some really good players at Hertha Berlin, but I wouldn't say it matches the likes of RB Leipzig. They've got Beato, who did really well for Belgium in the World Cup in 2018, in my opinion. They've got a pretty good goalkeeper. Piatek, the striker at Hertha Berlin, I think he's got so much talent, but he hasn't really shown it since his transfer there. So I am going to have to go for a pretty biased, pretty one-way 3-1 win to RB Leipzig in this situation. Hoffenheim versus Cologne is next. Now, this is one that I think is going to be probably the closest game in this match week, because if you look at the likes of Hoffenheim, they haven't been in great form lately. They haven't won in their last 7 games in the Bundesliga, but yet they have beaten the likes of Borussia Dortmund, they beat the likes of Schalke, they beat the likes of Bayern Munich, they've beaten the big dogs in the Bundesliga, so I think that they could pose some sort of threat. And if you look at Cologne, they've got some great players. They've got Hector in the team, who does really well, Timo Horn in the goalkeeper position, so these are some really strong players. Cologne, I'm not too, I mean, look, they drew with Mainz, who aren't the strongest team in the league, but they did lose only 2-1 to Borussia Mönchengladbach. I'm sitting pretty much on the fence because, let's be honest, when it comes to Cologne, their form really can dip, but it really can rise. So they are probably one of the most unpredictable teams in the league. Same with Hoffenheim, beat some of the biggest teams in the league, but at the same time being in pretty bad form. So I'm going to take, probably the wimp way out, and I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to give a 2-2 draw. Let's see if that is what ends up happening. And I mean, if it ends up happening, I just look like a genius. If not, let's not talk about that. Next match is going to be between Fortuna Düsseldorf and Schalke, which Fortuna Düsseldorf, I've never heard more of a Harry Potter name in my entire life. Fortuna Düsseldorf, though, have only won 5 games this Bundesliga season, and none of them have been against huge teams. But Schalke, on the other hand, their form is really bizarre if you look at them. They lose to really, really weird teams, and a huge concern for me is they lost 4-0 to their rivals Borussia Dortmund. And as good as Borussia Dortmund are, when it comes to a rival match, playing against pretty much your biggest rivals, you expect it to be close, and the fact that they didn't have that in much of a fight versus their biggest rivals, it does concern me quite a bit. So I am going to go for a 2-0 win to Schalke. Not a huge win, just because I do not have that much faith in their ability at the moment. They need to pick up, and it is a shame because they've had some great players that they've sold over the years. The only player I know who I really can see as reliable in the Schalke team is Nubel, goalkeeper, who's even moving to Bayern Munich, which, wow, Bayern Munich really do just buy all the good players in this league. And it's a shame because Schalke, if they kept their best players, they really could look like such a superstar team. They've sold the likes of Manuel Neuer in goalkeeper position. They used to have Özil in the midfield and used to have Leroy Sané on the wing position. It's a pity they sold so many good players, but you know what? I am still going to give them this win, although their squad isn't as strong as it could be. Augsburg versus Paderborn is next. Now, looking at Paderborn itself, there are no superstar players that stand out to me. I don't know a whole lot about this team, but looking at the individuals, I can kind of conclude that they aren't a great team. They are very, very low on the table. They don't really look impressive. And Augsburg have just come out of a huge win versus Schalke. As I said, although Schalke aren't the super team that they used to be, I think getting a win against a team like that still gives you some sort of power. And I do think that Augsburg have had some individuals that are, performing this season and that are great players overall. Their striker Niederlichter, I think that's how you pronounce it. This is a very dangerous video to make with pronunciation. He's had a really good season, picked himself a team of the season. They've got Max in the team in the left back position. They've got Lichtsteiner, the ex-Juventus and Arsenal left back or right back, depends on where he wants to play. He's a very solid option. And then you also get the likes of Reece Oxford from West Ham, who I think really should go back to the Premier League. He's spent enough seasons out on loan. But at the end of the day, just based on the players that I know, there are just more standout players at Augsburg. Once again, very tricky because I don't know too much about these two teams, which hopefully I'll learn over time with these prediction videos. I'm going to go for Augsburg with the 2-0 win. I think they're going to continue this winning form. Union Berlin and Mainz is the final team or the final fixture in this match week. And looking at Mainz, obviously Mainz is that team where Jurgen Klopp started his managing career, but there are no really good players at the moment. There's Boyata, the really promising looking attacking midfielder there, but at the end of the day, Union Berlin, they did beat in the reverse fixture. They did get a 3-2 win versus Mainz, so I would have to lean more towards Union Berlin. In the first fixtures back from the lockdown, they did end up getting a 2-0 loss to Bayern Munich, which, although it is a loss versus a team like Bayern Munich, that's actually a pretty impressive result for them. So I think I'm going to go for the exact same result as the reverse fixture, and I'm going to replicate the 3-2 result. So guys, that is my match week predictions back. Once again, it's very tricky because I don't know all the Bundesliga teams, but I'm really willing to learn, and I'm excited to learn about these different teams. Whether I'll be right with these predictions or not, probably not, but I hope you guys ended up enjoying it. Anyway, please do subscribe if you are new to this channel. I would really appreciate it. But at the end of the day, I love all of your support. I appreciate all of you, and please do subscribe. It helps me out so much. This has been Finn, FYNN. Cheers.